Good evening and welcome to a show with no name. I'm Marlon Weems and I'm here with my man Arturo Dominguez, the publisher of Decolonized Journalism. And
All right.
I got it, man. I said that with
That was
authority, didn't
smooth.
I?
Yeah.
So a little inside humor there, folks. So a lot of stuff going on. Um, but I guess why don't we do this? Why don't we take a few minutes, let folks kind of, enter the arena, and you know, um, I guess a little bit of small talk, man. I am so pleased to announce that about 5 minutes ago, my air conditioner finally turned off. It's been it's been
Wow.
running and run since I woke up this morning at 6 o'clock. It's been that hot here, and I know
Wow.
I should not complain to someone from Texas, but there it is.
We're cooking.
There it is, man. I know
We're cooking.
you got no sympathy for my little problems.
Well, no, I know it's been hot, man, in some places where it doesn't
It's
normally get
crazy.
this hot. And I feel for people up north who aren't used to this. Like for us, it's, just another day in the summer. It's miserable, but it's still just another day in the summer. For
Yeah.
you guys, it's got to be even worse because you're not,
I mean,
attuned to it.
normally, um, where I live is about sometimes it's as much as 10 degrees difference cooler than it is, 25 miles down the road in Wilmington. Um,
Right.
and it's just because there's no high rise or anything like that on this island, or even in Surf City on the mainland. There's nothing really. But now, man, it's we're starting to get some weather. I think this might be
Yeah.
one of the hottest summers since I've been here. Um, so I think maybe we start off and we talk about Cuba a little bit, and then there was something that happened this morning that just set me off on CNBC, and we can talk about that, and you know we'll do our usual intro and then pick up on the other side, folks. So lots to discuss.
Yeah.
Time for a show with no name. All right, all right. So I think maybe we start off on the global stage. Just a couple of hours ago, I've heard for the umpteenth time that Trump's got the Strait of Hormuz fixed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
No, we're
I
good.
mean, for whatever that's worth. But it's really interesting though, because what has developed is everybody's negotiating around America. So you got Iran has reached out to some of the European countries about removing mines. I guess it's Oman, which is they're on the other side of the strait from Iran, so they're talking and trying to come to a deal, and we're sitting over here messing around with a reflecting pool. So thoughts?
I mean, when you put it like that,
I know.
it makes us look
It's
terrible,
just
obviously.
sad, man. It's like we're so
It is.
insignificant. I mean,
Right,
really.
right. And, this whole situation with Iran, I mean, it kind of came to a head a little bit in these primaries, but I think it's really going to come to a head in November. I see a lot of Republicans struggling already, and the primaries are just barely over. You know, um, and I think Iran is going to be it's going to sink a lot of people. There's so many things that are going to sink Republicans. I think the Epstein files, Iran, Gaza, Cuba, all these things. So much working against them, but I think Iran is the biggest one because our biggest issues in the U.S. are are, money related. We're all broke. We're all struggling to get by. And the Iran situation makes that so much worse because of oil prices and gas prices and all these things, which in turn makes everything else more expensive. There we are.
Yeah, I'm back, man. I think my meter went off. I have been putting in some work today, and I guess it was only a matter of time. So, um, yeah, folks, this is one of the things Egberto and I joke about this. Egberto Willies, who I do a Wednesday midday show with. We don't have producers. We're just over here flipping all the switches ourselves, and just I'm pretty impressed with us, to be honest, because we're guys, we're journalists. We're not technicians or any of this stuff. So,
Right.
anyway, we
And
for us to
one
pull
of the
this
things I
stuff
try
off, go ahead, man.
Right. No, I was gonna say one of the things I try to tell people is because most people have this perception of journalists as, the people you see on TV. But
Hmm.
if you really pay attention, the people that do the work in the background, they look like me, they look like you,
Yeah, I mean,
regulars, we're
you
not
look
made for
at
TV, you know what I mean? So
yeah, there's that show on Apple TV, The Morning Show. And if you've ever watched Anchorman, these guys just looking at the
well,
teleprompter and reading. I mean, I'm not saying that they're
right.
not, smart
I mean,
people,
some
but
are. Yeah.
but
Right,
the
right.
but the technology and the making all the trains run on time, they're not doing that. Even some
Right.
of these independent shows that quote unquote, um, I mean, they got all kind of people, right? So anyway, I don't
Yeah.
begrudge them. I would have it if I could afford it, believe me. Um,
Yeah. No
but yeah,
kidding.
man, a lot of stuff weird. So Cuba, again, I've been seriously busy this week. I had to buy a new car, and I'm having to clean up my my son had a wreck 2 or 3 weeks ago. So you know how that is, man. All kind of
No.
getting
Yeah.
insurance and just it's a mess. But so I haven't, all that to say, I have seen headlines on, stuff going on in Cuba, and I haven't had a chance to really dig into it. So what's happening?
Well, the latest was, I mean, my latest report, I touched on the thousands of containers that are being held in ports around the Caribbean because all the major shipping companies abandoned them there due to the May 1st executive order that Donald Trump signed, which says that anybody who does any business with Cuba or the Cuban government is subject to sanctions. And the way things were before that order was if you're a shipping company, you take your boat, you dock in Cuba. The sanctions prior to this were you can't dock in the United States for 180 days. So a lot of companies don't ship to Cuba for that reason because they can't afford to not be able to dock in the US for 6 months.
Jeez.
The new executive order threatens very heavy sanctions on shipping companies, and the biggest ones were in the process of delivering legally purchased, syringes, food, healthcare equipment, things like that. They were in the process of shipping those when Trump signed the May executive order, and because of that, they just started dumping them in Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, Colombia. There's containers
So wait, whoa, let me understand. So
sitting
these are
everywhere.
things that the Cuban government or whomever has paid for that's being
Right,
shipped, but it can't.
right.
So this stuff is just sitting somewhere.
Right, right. And the
Wow.
shipping companies said that if the Cuban government wants to come and pick up their containers themselves and finish the last leg of the delivery, they can, but they'd have to do it at their own expense. And,
Mm,
here they are. The Cuban government paid for the shipping and they
right.
failed to come through. Right. And nope, they're not offering concessions. They're not trying to help. The idea
Well,
that
you know what, man? I can sort of see it. I'm delivering some stuff to you, and something happens. I'm not allowed to, make that last leg. I mean, it really shouldn't be on the company or on Cuba's paid for it. So I don't
right.
know. there may be a, I wonder if there's like a, sort of force majeure kind of clause that
Right.
lets them out of it, because I mean, essentially it's not that they can't deliver. The United States is in
They
the way.
won't.
Yeah.
Right. Right. They won't. And according to the Cuban government, there's 7,000 containers
Jeez.
in all these different countries. I've reached out to the shipping company so I can get an actual number from them, and the best I can do is just do an assumption. But from May till now, how many shipping containers were headed to Cuba and got stuck in the Caribbean somewhere? And I put the number easily around 3,000, 3,500. So
Wow.
7,000 containers is not a stretch. It's probably a conservative number. There's probably more. There's parts for the electrical grid in there, solar panels. There's a lot of things. And right now, basically, the only ships getting in there are the ones that are owned by, for example, the Chinese government. Nobody's going to tell them they can't go, right?
Right.
Like, what are you going to do? Right. So, when you're limited to maybe one or two partners that are willing to take the chance, the situation gets bad. And on the island, it's getting really, really bad. Water systems which are reliant on, diesel to power a lot of their pumps and things haven't been functional. Access to fresh water is becoming harder and harder. Finding fuel is becoming it's just extremely difficult. The grid was down for 3 whole days the other day, 3 days straight in this
Hmm.
extreme heat. And there was a lot of blame going around, but at the end of the day, I mean, come on, man, it's the oil embargo.
Yeah.
Their grid runs on
I,
oil, and Cu- Cuba can only produce so much oil, so they just can't keep it
what
operational
is it
without
that
import.
we are trying to accomplish? Just the total collapse of the government, and then we go back in there and make it like in The Godfather, when all
Right.
the moneyed interests get into Cuba and get, take their land back and so on and so forth. I'm just,
Um, I mean,
I just don't
essentially,
understand why now. Why Cuba? What's the
well, why
deal?
now is because Trump wants to be able to say he did the thing.
But
That's
what's
why
the
he,
thing? What is the thing?
the thing is finally, upending communist Cuba or whatever, and taking over the island. But if you look at all the declassified documentation on Cuba, the biggest fear, and this is an ongoing theme for decades, the biggest fear is a successful socialist project 90 miles off the coast of the United States. Because the concern is that US voters will start demanding more from their lawmakers.
You
And
mean kind of
that's
like we're
literally
doing
that's the
now?
biggest, right. That's the biggest motivator. And I tell people this all the time, right? Take Cuba's pharmaceutical industry, right, by itself. A successful Cuba would undermine our pharmaceutical industry overnight because they create drugs, share those drugs with the world for free, even go to other countries to help establish mass production for these medicines and vaccines and things like that, all for free.
Hmm.
How would our pharmaceutical industry function if Cuba was a direct competitor? It wouldn't. It would change the way our pharmaceutical industry operates. Now, do the same thing that I just did with healthcare, with housing, with
Hmm.
food, all of which are inalienable human rights in Cuba: food, housing, healthcare, and education. Do that with all four of those industries and make Cuba an equal partner. And all of a sudden, you undermine so many profit centers for these people that have created little microeconomies over just exploitation. It's just a ridiculous thing that to think that the government is so afraid of a successful socialist project so close. Meanwhile, we have Alzheimer's patients leaving the United States and going to Cuba for Alzheimer's treatment to slow down or stop their Alzheimer's. And it actually works. So Cuba offers that to US citizens for free, and of course, Trump had to put a stop to that. Now they're denying Americans access to adequate healthcare. And it's, telling people they can't go to Cuba for healthcare, telling people they can't do business with Cuba. telling me I can't send money to my family in Cuba, or I'm limited in what I can ship without having to be licensed by the Office of Assets and Control. Um, it's just ridiculous. Is that freedom? That's not freedom. If you tell me I can't do business with somebody, farmers in the United States have been dying to do business with Cuba,
Mhm.
agricultural business. The United States denies them that. Is that freedom? It's not.
You know,
I mean, I don't understand what people think, man.
I ran across
Excuse me.
it's just kind of funny that you mentioned the, people going to Cuba. I saw a guy just online, and he was talking about how, a friend of his had driven like 4 hours to go and get some dental work done in Mexico. And the
Mhm.
cost of him, the cost of the gas, and I think he said it was like $500 for whatever the procedure was. And we're not talking about like a guy, guy on the side of the road kind of thing. This was state of the art, highly ranked, whatever.
Right.
And had he had the same work done in the US, it was going to be, instead of 500, 5 grand, you know? And so I, I just think that we have really gotten um, sold on the idea that there's nothing better. And I always tell people, America is an enormous country. And so, you travel 1,000 miles in a direction, you're still in America. And these other countries are,
Right.
they're in proximity to each other. You take the Eurozone. You go to France, well, shoot, you're just a hop and a skip from Germany, Italy, all these different cultures. And so we just don't travel outside of our domain enough to know when we're being lied to. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think if I always tell my kids, I mean, I encourage them to leave, not necessarily defect to some communist nation, just get outside of America and see what the rest of the world's doing.
Right, right. Even if you spend time in Mexico, not in a tourist hotspot, like not Cancun for
Yeah.
spring break, but you go to actual, Mexico somewhere, go chill around Mexico City. I've been across the border several times, several border towns, and it's just as soon as you cross the border, it's a whole different world, and it's not necessarily worse. It's actually in a lot of ways better. The people are more welcoming. You know what I mean? Like there's a sense of community. There's a lot of, mutual aid happening just between neighbors and stuff. And we don't have that here because we live this weird individualist lifestyle that comes from Protestantism, which people don't realize that was exported from Europe. The Protestants who fled England brought that here, and that's the life we live, right? A rugged
The rugged
individualism, whatever.
individualism. I mean, it sounds
Yeah,
great,
yeah,
right? But it
yeah,
also means you're out here by yourself.
right.
So
And you're trying to compete with everybody. Why are you competing with everybody? Like I don't compete with anybody. I see somebody might blow right past me. It happened with Allison Wilts, right? I saw her blow right past me after she got her PhD. Her following blew up, like all this stuff. And you know what? I was proud of her, man. Like I'm not
no
in a
doubt,
competition. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I do.
I'm cheering her on in the background. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm not trying to compete with anybody. I've come across a few people here on Substack that working with them after a while, it feels like, they're trying to be in a competition with you. And I'm just not, I can't do that, man. Like, I like chilling with you because we're not in competition with each other. We're on the same team, right?
Not at
So,
all.
that's one of the things I like. Like, Walter's that way, Egberto's that way. I'm just not trying to, if you want to try to outdo me, by all means, go ahead. I don't care. And I just I don't buy into this individualism thing. I mean, I'm Cuban, so a sense of community is kind of burned into us, right? Like you look at what Cuba's been going through for the last 7 decades, and you have no choice but to have a sense of community and feed each other and clothe each other and things like that. So
It's so
that
funny, man, because you get these weird comments, and we're streaming on YouTube and Facebook and X, and of course on Substack, and and you get these folks that they have these words of wisdom. And, like my man here is saying that, yeah, they're so successful that people are trying to get over here on a raft. And they're right. But the reason they're trying to get out is we're turning their electricity off. We're starving their
Yeah,
economy. So, of course they're trying to get away from that. You know,
right,
people really should understand the waves of immigration that we have coming from South America. There is a direct through line to US policy in these
yeah,
countries. I
right.
mean, it's between that and the drug cartels. And look, by the way, these drug cartels would not have customers if it wasn't for the United States of America, So it works
Right.
both ways.
They wouldn't have guns. They wouldn't have the guns they have if it wasn't for us. We
Exactly.
give them the
So
guns,
this is,
right?
it's not like people just hate Cuba and they're trying to leave just for no particular reason. It's because of
Right.
us. I mean,
Yeah,
we have had a trade embargo on this little island for what, 70
67,
years? Yeah.
almost 70 years.
So yeah, so yeah, there's a little bit of nuance is all I'm saying. That's it.
Right. And one of the things I like to throw in Trumpers' faces all the time, because deep down everybody knows that US interventionism is what leads to mass migration events. But when you look at Trump's maximum pressure sanctions from his first term, prior to those, let's use Venezuela as an example. Prior to those sanctions, about 150,000 people left per year out of Venezuela. Not a crazy number. They just had a negative migration rate for the whole time Chavez was in power. 14, 15 years, whatever. Those sanctions come in during Trump's first term, and all of a sudden, that 150,000 within a year becomes 2 million
Wow.
leaving Venezuela. Right. Cuba, same thing. 600,000 people left Cuba right after those maximum pressure sanctions because they were starving. You can't bring in anything manufactured in the US or has more than 10% US parts in it. That includes food, that includes fertilizer, that includes agriculture. That is everything, power grid, you name it. And that's virtually every product on the planet has at least 10% US part. A tiny microchip could count, and that's the correlation there is undeniable. The data is undeniable. It's everywhere. And yeah, like 18 or 8 million people inevitably left Venezuela in that time, until Trump just got into office this last time. And most of them stayed in Latin America. So everybody, all these MAGA thinking, all these why do they want to come here? I would have to remind them that only 18% of Venezuelans that fled came here. The rest, most of them stayed in Colombia because Colombia opened their arms to them, brought them in, provided them resources, took care of them, and treated it as a temporary situation. We don't do that. We don't do that.
Well,
So
speaking of
yeah,
temporary status, I mean, look what we're doing now. We've, I guess, pretty much ended temporary protected status for Haitians.
right.
And
Hmm.
what is crazy to me, dude, is this. We're hurting ourselves. These people will leave, and I don't know, God
Yep.
bless them. There's nothing in Haiti to go back to. A lot of them. So think about, most of these people who are under TPS status, or certainly a large percentage of them. This goes back to when there was that devastating earthquake. What, 10 years, 15 years ago, maybe
Yeah,
in
15
Haiti,
or so.
right? Yeah, because I was still working in New York then. So yeah.
Hell,
So
wasn't
so
that? Yeah.
a
Anyway,
lot of
go
these
ahead.
people have come here and built a life. They've opened businesses. They've got children that were born here. And I guess look, man, what gets me is I just think because my two youngest kids still, they're still at home. And I'm just trying to think of how devastating it would be if Shannon and I just got kicked out of the country. But they are still here. What in the world are they supposed to do? And then you look at the knock-on effect. I have been hearing, and I'm listening to Bloomberg News all day, the financial stuff. Not probably never will listen to CNBC again, but we'll talk about that in a second. But my thing is, when it becomes enough of an impact to the economy that they start talking about it on financial news. So what are we talking about? Home health care. Apparently, there's
Yeah.
a large percentage of home health care nursing and people in, hospice care, all this kind of thing. And we're basically kicking all these people out of the country, and there's nothing to
Right.
replace them.
Right.
I'm just, it's a shame when the hate part of the policy outweighs the common sense part. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, that's U.S. policy in a nutshell, right? Where the hate outweighs the common sense. Haiti removing temporary protective status is just such a shitty thing to do, considering that we keep Haiti so destabilized. Like right now, we have Eric Prince in there, of Blackwater fame,
Well, man, the whole
providing
history of Haiti,
security.
when you talk
Right.
about how we can't have a communist country 90 miles away, being successful, that was the whole calculus behind when, and we're talking, hundreds of years ago, when Haiti staged that revolution that kicked all the enslavers out. It was the US that stepped in to help France keep these guys from
Right.
succeeding
The other
economically.
thing is, right, it wasn't just the Haitian Revolution that drew so much ire. It was that they also helped, Simon Bolivar, for example, liberate Latin America from Spanish and Portuguese control and
Well,
slavery through 6 different countries. So yeah, the Haitians they financed a lot of good stuff that our government doesn't see as good stuff. So that's what it
I
boils
mean, are
down
they
to.
not, am I mistaken? But are they not, I think they are still paying France
Yeah,
for kicking them out, for
right,
basically liberating themselves from enslavement.
right.
That was the deal
Reparations
they
for
had to make.
slavers.
They are
Right,
paying reparations to their former enslavers.
right.
Make it make
That's
sense, man.
it's crazy. And then, now with Eric Prince down there and his little private firm, they're using drones to supposedly target criminals, but like thousands of civilians have been killed in the last couple of years just by his security team. So, Eric Prince is also the guy who once referred to Venezuela as El Dorado because of the amount of gold Venezuela has. Haiti has a shitload of gold too. So there's a reason Eric Prince is there. And we all know about his shenanigans in the Middle East and
Yep.
his thievery and his corruption and his guys smuggling drugs. And they're doing that shit now. They're moving weapons. They're moving because it's easy for them to do.
Well, I mean, it's the whole
Isn't
country is
keeping an eye on them.
destabilized. So who's going to stop
Right.
him?
Right. And I mean, we do that. Remember when, we overthrew, and I'll never forgive Jimmy Carter for this, but threatening, Haitian leaders to step down. And, the Jets are on their way, step down or it's over. So they had to step down. We've overthrown duly elected, government officials. We completely dismantled Haiti's government. And then we want to sit here and wonder why Haiti is so chaotic. Dude, even Bill Clinton like ruined Haiti's rice industry, and intentionally, so that they would import U.S. rice instead of making their own.
Well,
That
you
was
know
one of
what
the
that's all
last
about.
most
So
valuable.
Bill Clinton's an Arkansas boy, and
Right.
Arkansas as a state produces, I would think they're the biggest rice producer in the United States,
Yeah.
and one of next to like China. I would say that the U.S. as a result of the rice industry in Arkansas is probably, I don't know. I guess the U.S. is maybe a close, maybe a distant second, because China is, they're kind of kicking our ass
Right.
and everything else.
I
So
know. I know. We produce a good amount of rice in Texas. We're not by far or even close to being the top producer, but we do have quite a few rice farmers here. because the issue of water allocation always comes up, and rice farmers are at the front of that line. So
Hmm.
yeah, we hear about that a lot. But yeah, that's basically what it boils down to. It's like it's the same thing when unions way back in the day, they were like all colonialization of Puerto Rico. But when the Jones Act came into play, where that forced any shipments coming to Puerto Rico to come to the U.S. first, be offloaded onto a U.S. ship, and then sent to Puerto Rico, unions were behind that.
Okay.
We're against colonialization, but we get a piece of this pie, then we want that because that keeps our workers working, even though it's a redundant and ridiculous process that only costs Puerto Ricans, you know, extra money at the grocery store. So many ships drive right by Puerto Rico. So they right by, dock in the US, unload, put it on a US ship so they can go back. I mean, it makes no damn sense. I mean,
So for
the
people who don't know who Eric Prince is, I was just looking in the comments and his name hasn't, I mean, he was a fixture in the first Trump administration in the Middle East. And I guess what is Blackwater? Isn't that
yeah,
his so
yeah,
basically he's hiring all these soldiers of fortune guys and paying them really well and breaking a whole lot of shit from what I can tell. But I mean, you
yeah.
probably know
He was
more about him or can be more detailed
well.
than
He
me.
was his business model became a prominent one during the global war on terror, the whatever you want to call it these days. It was an all out slaughter, but it's the U.S. government uses private military contractors because private military contractors aren't beholden to the U.S. military, to the Geneva Convention, to any rules of war, rules of engagement. And we saw that in Iraq, where civilians were being killed by Blackwater people all the time because supposedly they felt threatened by these, shooting into cars, killing people, blowing up gas stations, drone strikes, all that stuff. And there's no accountability because they're private military contractors, and there's no oversight of that. Nobody, the U.S. military is not paying attention to them intentionally, um, because they're committing war crimes. And if they were in any way, shape, or form linked to the U.S. military, then that comes down on the U.S. military for allowing it. So rather than be held responsible for not overseeing these people, we just don't do it. So how could we see it? We don't have oversight. We don't have authority. It's a civilian firm. They use all these different excuses and loopholes to do this, and at the end of the day, it's done to destabilize countries, to kill people, and to take control of resources, political control, infrastructure control, all that stuff. So you know you see all the issues in the Caribbean, like blackouts are common. It's not just Cuba, it's Puerto Rico, it's the Dominican Republic, it's all of them. Lack of access to fresh water, all big problems. But when you look to Cuba, the only reason it's so much worse is the United States. But when you look at the Caribbean, the United States is involved in all of that. The United States could fix, for example, Puerto Rico's power grid tomorrow. They could fix Puerto Rico's water infrastructure tomorrow. All the resources are right here in the United States. We just refuse to take them over there so they can fix the stuff. And that's intentional. Cubans see this. And at what point does anybody think Cubans be like, yeah, that's what I want? You know what I mean? Like, it's already bad. Like, I don't want to be bad and under the thumb of the United States. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Let's not make it that much worse. So yeah, it's a crazy sort of a scenario. And the propaganda has been so deep and has been around for so long that people just overlook the common sense aspect of this. So you don't win friends by starving them, right? Nobody in Cuba wants to be the friend of the United States who's been
Mm.
starving them for 6 decades. I mean, let's be real about it. They might hate their government, but I'm pretty sure they hate the United States a little bit more right now. It's just a ridiculous thing that people don't look. I don't get how people don't see the common sense aspect of things.
So I guess we really got to talk about the midterms. this
Yeah.
past
Oh yeah.
Tuesday. What was your takeaway?
Um, yeah, I think progressives did really well. Some centrists did, won their elections. Um, all the hype and the panic about socialism and communism is obviously it's unfounded. This election season is no different than any other. Nobody's taking over anything. Communism ain't coming to the United States. They need to shut up about that. But but yeah, I
You
don't
know
know.
what's
I think
funny
it's really
about
good.
that? When we you got these guys talking about socialism and communism, while at the same time our government is strong arming companies to give up equity to the United States of America.
Yeah,
Last
I
time I
mean,
checked, we have pressured and what I mean by that, for example, NVIDIA, chip maker, wanted to sell a certain type of chip to China. In order to be able to do that, they had to give up some equity in the company. This is a $5 trillion company, market cap.
right,
So 10%, 5%, we're talking about real money. There have been several instances. And, so, I mean, that's kind of socialism. It's really actually because socialism is in part the government controlling the means of production. So the government, basically running everything. So if it was really socialism, the government would just be in charge. China, what they do is what they call a golden share or something like that. Even though
right,
it's a small number of shares, they have control. So that was why it was so difficult to do that TikTok deal because
right.
you had ByteDance that owned TikTok, and then the Chinese government had this, quote, golden share interest in
Hmm.
ByteDance. So even though they were not the majority owner, the the terms of their interest prevented the company from doing anything that they didn't want to see happen. So
Right.
I mean, it's just so ironic to me. And I guess I wrote something literally yesterday. I saw this article in the Washington Post, and it was an op-ed. And at the beginning of it was pretty positive. It was talking about Abdullah al-Sayed and these different progressive wins that had occurred. And then the more I got into it, it's it's really a blueprint written for establishment Democrats. And this guy's strategy was what you really need to do, establishment Democrats, is welcome these progressives into the fold and kind of adopt some of their policies just long enough to get into office. And then you can go ahead and go on back to, you know,
Right.
move into the right. And so it's a pretty
Right.
sinister. And this was in yesterday's paper, you know, and I wake up this morning and actually a guy that I used to work with, a guy that used to be on my trading desk, text messages me about 8:30 this morning, and he says, "Man, the former New York governor he's full of shit." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Which guy?" Cuomo. He's on CNN. I'm like, Cuomo. What's he doing on CNBC? That's actually because he's not a finance guy. He's not in charge of anything. So I hit Alexa and go to Sirius, and man, guys, I got to tell you, it was so shameful the things that they were saying. Um, Basically accusing the entire DSA of well, you know what? I got the clip. It's a much the interview's about 10 minutes long. It's on YouTube. I'll drop a link. But this is just a taste of what this guy, and it wasn't just him. You got Joe Kernan, um, who does, he's one of the guys that does the morning shows, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. And I don't know if there was a third person, but they were the ones doing most of the talking. And this guy was accusing Zoran Mamdani as being anti-Semitic. This story, I posted something about earlier in the week where there's a committee that is, I guess, a judicial selection committee, and it's made up of a dozen people. My understanding is the mayor gets to appoint 6 of the 12, and then there are other entities that that appoint the rest, the other 6. And for whatever reason, of those 12 people, there is no Jewish person. Now, there is no requirement that there be a Jewish person on this
Right.
board. And Mamdani has, he's appointed a number of judges, and some of them have been Jewish. And yet, that's not good enough, because there isn't a Jewish person on this on this board or whatever it's called. Well, they're saying that he's anti-Semitic. He doesn't even select all the people. So that is somehow evidence of anti-Semitism. And it's like somebody, and I forget if it was on Substack or maybe somewhere else that I posted it, but some person said, well, you know what? I forget what their background was, they Taiwanese, whatever it might. And they were like, well, there's no Taiwanese person on there. That's racist. It's so ignorant.
Right.
But that's the kind of thing we're dealing with. And they bring Andrew Cuomo, who, by the way, got his ass kicked by Mamdani. And this is what he had to say. Well, yeah. Here we go.
They are putting forth is fraudulent. And that's becoming more and more clear. The mayor of New York City ran everything free, free buses, free food, free college, free, and with a smile. And the rich are bad people, and we're going to take the money from the bad rich people, and we're going to make everything free, and we're going to stop the oligarchy. Bernie Sanders, we're going to stop the oligarchy. I don't know what that is, but it sounds bad. We're against the oligarchy. Yeah, except what's happening is nothing is free. And none of that stuff is happening, and people are seeing that. Also, conceptually, change, reform, everything free sounded great. But now the DSA opened their mouth, Democratic Socialists, and they're starting to explain what their platform is. And it is frightening. And that's why you saw the lead in Michigan collapse. That socialist candidate was up like 15 points. And over the past 2 weeks, the Democratic Socialists have been talking about their platform. Do away with the president. Do away with the Supreme Court. Do away with the Senate.
Nobody's saying this.
Israel. And I think people have said, whoa, let's slow down.
So
CNBC posted this shit like it was really like they were proud of it. Man, I'm telling you, first of all, Mamdani's approval rating, I checked, it's Marist poll, just under 50%. So he's doing better than Trump is doing. They just began to open some of these state or city-run grocery stores. And I've heard people, oh man, that's going to put the bodegas out of business. They're not opening them in Midtown Manhattan. They're opening these stores or grocery stores in food deserts where there is nothing else.
Right.
And, I'm fine with having an argument or a debate over this kind of shit, but we got to start off with the truth, right? And that CNBC would bring that disgraced guy on, and they just, Andrew Ross Sorkin was right in there with him. This is what we're going to have to deal with for the next several months till we get to the midterms. These pseudo liberals that seem like, this guy was talking about, Andrew Ross Sorkin. Oh man, oh yeah, I see it. It's so much anti-Semitic. Do you really think all the anti-Semitism is coming from the DSA? I mean, really? White
Right.
supremacists are right over there. They hate your ass just as much.
That
You
Dude,
know?
that's what kills me. That's what kills me. All these cynical claims of anti-Semitism have done so much harm. And the fact that all they're focused on is progressives being anti-Semitic and not actual neo-Nazis
Right.
is really telling. It's really
Well,
telling.
that's what lets you
These
know
cynical,
it's bullshit. It's
right. And
bullshit.
the fact that most of these cynical claims of anti-Semitism come from anti-Semites who think the Jews control the world and
Dude,
blah, blah,
and
blah, and all this weird shit. Come on,
not
man.
for nothing, Abdul Syed isn't even in the DSA. He's not, I mean, he's
Right.
progressive.
Right.
So
Right.
it's also interesting to
That's
me when you think about it. You got these people complaining about anti-Semitism while being fucking racist in doing it.
right.
You know,
Right. And I did an article 2 or 3 years ago with the help from Rutgers University. And man, the data they gave me was crazy. But essentially the article proves that the vast majority of cynical claims of anti-Semitism are rooted in Islamophobia. They say that to people because they
look,
don't
man,
want to look
you,
right. They
you've
want to
never heard this kind of outrage on fucking Eric, whatever, you know, the former guy got indicted.
right.
We did not hear anywhere near the kind of outrage. And
Right.
man, I'm telling you, it really, I'm trying not to just get unprofessional, but man, I mean, the day before I read this article that starts off like, you know, the guy literally, I just posted it in the Substack chat room, and I will post it in all the other, but the guy literally said, okay, establishment Democrats, you've got to figure out how to slow this shit down, because the goal has to be you cannot let, and they literally name checked, this guy did, AOC. You've got to, because this momentum is starting to build, and you got to figure out a strategy to keep this woman from getting a nomination. This guy's not even talking about the midterms. He's already scoped it out that the midterms might be lost from the standpoint of slowing down this momentum, because it's not going to, dude, they're electing Democratic Socialists in fucking Kansas.
Yeah.
You know, in Kansas.
Right. Right.
So,
And you know,
go ahead, man.
Clear about
I'm going.
no
off
to
over
to
here.
be clear about the Democratic Socialists, like abolishing the Senate is part of their platform. You know, it's seen as a roadblock to pass legislation. I kind of agree with the Senate being a roadblock in a sense. But as far as the rest of the stuff, you know, with the Supreme Court, nobody's talking about abolishing the Supreme Court. We're talking about expanding that motherfucker to
Exactly.
make it more
But that
representative.
argument doesn't really work when you're trying to scare the shit out of people. Okay.
Right.
It's just
right.
like you'll hear, and guys, you're going to hear this over and over and over, that they want to abolish prisons. Like folks are just out here in the street murdering folks and you give them a ticket, I guess. I don't know what they mean. But what they're saying is they want to abolish the carceral system that's got, we got more people in prison than any country on the face of the freaking earth.
For victimless crimes. Mostly for victimless crimes. Some weed and shit. Like,
man, think of how crazy it is that I can drive a mile down the street and buy weed at a dispensary in North Carolina, and at the same time, they're fucking people in prison for selling weed.
Right. Some people have life sentences.
Yeah.
Right. For weed.
Oh, dude, you go down in Arkansas, man, it's like, you know, freaking Cool Hand Luke. You got guys, you know, police on horses in cotton fields and guys out here, and they're almost always going to be black or brown.
Right.
This is happening now. Dude, remember when Trump first won, what was the first thing we were writing about and talking about? This freaking prison system.
Right.
And now look what's going on. You got people in jail. They're not trying to deport these people. You know what they're doing? They're farming them out. for nothing,
Yeah.
for little to no money.
Yeah.
But
I mean, they
yeah,
do that in the prisons, and they do that in prisons
yeah,
here.
they're
They do
allowed
it in
to do
prisons
it.
in Louisiana. Yeah,
14th
they're.
Amendment,
I
man,
mean,
or 13th rather.
right. 13th, right. That's. I think was it on this show that I said that, or it might have been with Walter. I said that the 13th Amendment is what happens when you negotiate with fascists, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you wanted to keep the racists happy. So instead of just outright abolishing slavery, let's add a precondition. You have to convict them first. Then slavery's fine. That's literally what the 13th
Yeah,
Amendment
I mean,
says.
it
You
says,
can't be
yeah,
any
there won't be
plainer
any
about it.
slavery unless you've been convicted of a crime. And so what
Right,
does that do?
right.
So suddenly the crime of standing on the corner gets your ass sent to prison.
Loitering, right, right. And I
Vagrancy.
said it, right. I said it the other day too. That's the reason why Latinos and Black people are disproportionately represented in prison, compared to the white population. Yeah, you look at the data, there are more white people in prison because there are more white people. But when you look at the per capita data, we are
Exactly.
in there disproportionately, like a tremendous amount. And that's part of breaking up families, destroying communities. That's what all that is. And then you get into the prison system, and then you get sucked into this gang culture bullshit, and that's all a system of oppression. That's what people want to abolish. There's nothing inhumane, ignorant, stupid, none of that about that. That's actually the right thing to do. We complain about prisoners in other countries, and you hear the inhumane conditions, prison in Cuba. There's a dude who was a supposed political prisoner in Cuba, wrote a story about the conditions in the prisons in Cuba, and I was like, I read that, I screenshotted it, I posted it everywhere. I'm like, this dude literally just described U.S. prisons. All of it. Everything he described were U.S. prisons. Hell, I saw a video clip of a Cuban prison yesterday, and I thought, damn, that's a clean motherfucker compared to what we see in Texas. Shit. There was a guy, right? They showed a picture of this dude who was all skin and bones, and they're like, oh, this is what they do to Cubans in prison. The guy who was skin and bones was dying from cancer. The Cuban prison system ensured he went to the hospital to get treated for cancer. We don't do that here. We don't. And like this guy got the free healthcare even while he was in prison. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm a prison abolitionist. I don't think anybody should be in prison, but not anybody. But you know what I mean. The
Sure.
carceral system.
Yeah, I mean, Jeffrey
But,
Dahmer. Yeah, we'll put him somewhere. But
well, of course, right. You got to put his ass
but
somewhere.
we got a lot
but
of nonviolent, victimless crimes, like you said.
right,
And
right.
well, okay. You remember the kid that and not even prisons. So think about Rikers Island. That's a jail. That's a jail, dude. It's like some shit out of the Count of Monte Cristo. And
It's one of the worst in the world. Yeah.
Kid, Khalif Browder, I think was his name.
Yeah.
That was accused of stealing a backpack or something.
Right.
And it's
shameful.
Debatable whether he actually committed the crime. But the bottom line is, this guy spent an inordinate amount of time at Rikers Island, I think it was. And just, a lot, it's an awful story. And the guy ended up, he finally got out and ended up hanging himself, just as a result of all the trauma. So, yeah.
His life was ruined.
Yeah.
Right? I think it was found out that he didn't steal the backpack. That's why they let him out of Rikers. Right. Yeah. And then he committed suicide. Right. Because he had spent so much time in there, was beaten.
He's getting his ass kicked every day.
Right. Right. His life was ruined. And yeah, I mean,
and that's just the story we know about.
Does.
That's a story we know about.
Right.
I'm sure it's not the only one. So yeah, I mean, look, we all, I assume we all love our country, but that doesn't mean we have to be blind to shit that we can see with our own eyes. And so
we don't have to love what our country does. Right.
So when I woke up this morning to this fucking Andrew Cuomo guy, I can't believe we're talking about CNBC. This is not Fox News or MS Now. This is supposed to be a financial channel. This guy has no business being on CNBC, and they bring him on and allow him to just, first of all, just lie. I mean, a lot of the stuff he was saying is just totally made up stuff. It just, and all he had to talk about, not Donald Trump, not Donald Trump over here, which, by the way, I kind of jumped the gun. Donald Trump was in the news this week.
Oh, I saw this.
Well, this happened. Look at the date. And I posted, if you're surprised that the media isn't covering the fact that Capital One Bank closed apparently hundreds of Trump-related bank accounts. This actually happened a couple of years ago, and the Trump family, so Trump wasn't president, and they sued Capital One, saying that they were being discriminated against because they're conservative. And now it's gotten into discovery, and it comes out that what in the hell are they, first of all, doing with hundreds of bank accounts? And so banks, you see FinCEN, that's basically the anti-money laundering apparatus in the financial industry. So when I ran a brokerage firm, I had to, if you saw some suspicious shit, you had to file a FinCEN report or your ass would be in trouble. So they're seeing something going on in all these many accounts, and they started closing them. Because it was Trump, they actually gave him more time than they should have to clean this shit up.
Right.
So this on your screen happened in 2015 during the run-up to the presidential election in 2016. I bet you didn't hear a damn thing about it, did you? The media did not cover it. At the time when this happened, and you see how it's worded. And so this is a release from the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. I'll post the article, but it's easy to find. They had been on Trump Casino for a long time about potential money laundering violations. And finally, they just said, fuck it, we're going to have to just find this guy. So we're not hearing about this on CNBC. You know what I'm saying? We're, and man, I guess if it was sort of even handed in the conversation, and I'm not saying, there's some people, you can pick any party, any direction, and you're going to find somebody saying some stupid shit. Right. But Mamdani's doing okay. I mean, to say that the guy's doing nothing, I mean, there's some 2-year-old kids.
He's polling really well.
Yeah, he's polling well. I mean, but he's doing something that people like, or his shit would be as bad as Trump's. So anyway.
Yeah. Trump's
let me cool off.
I saw in Texas, of all places, Trump's approval rating is a lowly 41%. In like North Dakota, it's 59, Wyoming, like 50 something. But in Texas, I was surprised to see it was only 41%.
I actually heard yesterday that his approval rating in Mississippi is in the 30s.
Yeah.
Mississippi, dude. If a racist can't do well in Mississippi, I don't know what the world's coming to.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
I don't know, man.
And then like today, or the last couple of days, there's been several reports from various outlets, either Fort Worth, Houston, San Antonio, and they're talking about how Ken Paxton is struggling to rally Republicans around him, while Tallarico, he has Democrats rallied around him. So he's out, courting independents and Republicans. And meanwhile, Paxton's still struggling with Republicans. And I'm like, I hope it works out, man. I really do.
I mean, this is as close as I have seen as far as Texas goes to, it's as close of a situation where it might actually flip. I mean, we've been to this well many times with guys like Beto and so forth, but we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to see Gina Hinojosa oust Greg Abbott, honestly, but that might be wishful thinking. I don't know. She's polling right up there with him. She's within a point.
You know, if Tallarico really starts doing well and brings out folks, it may be, she'll maybe have his coattails. You never know. But I'll tell you something,
Yeah,
the morning
yeah,
after, so what, the election in Michigan was Tuesday. A couple of outlets called it late, like, 2 o'clock that night, but it wasn't
right,
really official. I think AP called it that, the next morning. Man,
right.
I was listening to people and you would have thought he had lost. By the way,
Yeah,
you heard Cuomo with this, oh, he was 15 points ahead. That was a damn poll, one poll. And
right,
all that is, I've written about polls, I'm sure you have too. Anytime you take one of these polls, it all depends on the sample size, and B, who it is you're sampling. And to
right,
me, and what I've actually seen this in a couple of places, they oversampled young people because they're seeing these
right.
rallies and they're like, well, shit, maybe they're going to come out and vote this time. And I mean, he did fine, but it wasn't, the volume of young people that they had sampled for. So the bottom line is the guy won. It
Yeah.
should
And the
look,
turnout was extremely high.
1.5 million people, the
Crazy for a
Democrats,
midterm.
1.5 million people came out on the Democratic side. On the Republican side, fewer than 1 million.
Right. I heard there's rumor, and I don't know if this is backed by data or anything yet, but a lot of Republicans supposedly came out and voted for Haley Stevens
I can
because
believe that.
their
I can
guy
believe that.
was running unopposed. So there was nobody really to vote for.
I can
So
believe that.
yeah, they I can too. They do that in
And
Texas
so,
here a
yeah,
lot.
it's going to be very interesting. And I know one thing, man. Um, Democrats better get their shit together because they got to have Michigan if they got any chance of flipping the Senate. And I think they're going to be surprised because look at how this is shaping up. I don't know if Gretchen Whitmer has endorsed one way or the other, but I was pleasantly surprised to see, Haley Stevens, I think Jocelyn Benson, no, um, McMorrow, who had dropped out. And see, that's another thing people
Right.
don't think about. I think last time I checked, she got like 40,000 votes
Yeah,
because,
she got like 5%.
yeah. So it just bugs me, man. It really bugs me.
It
I
does.
can't deal with guys. This guy should be like, you can't come on TV. you know, I'm talking about Cuomo. This guy has done so much
Right.
nefarious shit and just, gross stuff. Women can't be on the elevator with his ass. And that's who they bring on to try to blow up
Right.
Mamdani. And
The
did
dude
you
is
hear him?
disgraced,
He's talking
man.
about he doesn't know what an oligarch is.
Get the hell. He is
I
one.
mean, what the hell? Right?
No.
Yeah,
But
Bernie's
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about oligarchs. I don't even know what that is.
Like we haven't been talking about Russian oligarchs my whole life. Like I've heard this my whole life.
But
Russian
you know
oligarch.
what? You know what? You for him to act that way is not really unexpected. But what shook
Right.
me was where he was saying it and the
Right.
audience that they were
That gets me
giving
too.
him. Because I'm
Right.
like, holy shit. See, I mean, and maybe we can close on this because we're going a little bit over, but power does not man, I'm sorry. I started actually hitting the table.
I was like, we got a remix happening.
I was hitting the table. Look, I'm just saying, man, what is happening, at least in my view, is that the powerless are rising up. And the people with power do not give that shit up willingly. And that's what I'm shook because of Cuomo.
That's
But I
true.
tell you what, the establishment is really fucking shook. And
Yeah.
that is the kind of behavior that you see, and it's desperation because all they
Right.
got is lying and scaring people. They
Right.
can't tell you got money in the bank when you don't have it. He
Right.
didn't have a thing to say, that not a single prescription for why those people are wrong and why the alternative or the status quo is right. All they
Right.
man, I'm telling you, for 10 minutes, I listened to these fucking guys sit up and just disparage Mamdani and all these other people whose names they didn't even fucking know. Right? And that tells
Yeah.
me we can win. Because
Right.
they are running scared.
That kind of
dude.
panic. Yeah, that kind of panic, it says a lot. It says a lot. I published an article today. I worked on it for a couple days. It's 2,600 words. It's ridiculous, but it's
You
it's
had
about
something to
a
say,
lot of it.
man.
Well, it has a lot to do with the primaries, and I went through, a lot of the issues that are really playing on voters' minds, during this election, and there are a lot. A lot of people want to focus on Israel and AIPAC, but a lot of these progressives won because they're addressing economic issues, housing issues,
Yes.
healthcare issues, and those are all top priority issues. So I have, basically sort of an autopsy of what happened. Plus, but I guess it's almost a blueprint. If Democrats want to win in November, this is what you should focus on, because that's
Mhm.
I mean, they are really missing the boat. They're so focused on just talking trash and talking down about, progressives and socialists and whatever, that they're not paying attention to what voters are saying and what voters want.
I
And
mean,
that article is that's what that article's supposed to do.
and not to belabor this, and I'm sorry if I am, but I'm sitting here and I'm listening to a bunch of millionaires complaining about people just wanting to pay their fucking bills. People
Not
just
have to
want to
stress
be
about
able.
rent, right?
You're right. People just wanting to, maybe have a good job and get paid a decent wage.
That's
And
it.
it's just really gross, man. I'm telling you. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right, got that out of my system. So, what else is going on?
Good show. No, it's a great show today. Hey, what else is going on? Let me tell you this real quick. Side note, kind of out of nowhere. I
Okay.
was mentioned in an article today about Ben Affleck.
What?
If you can believe that. He
Okay.
posted, there's some video
I'm
going
sorry, man.
around about him.
You're gonna have to say a little bit more. You can't leave us with a
Well,
cliffhanger. What the
there's
hell?
a video. There's a video going around of Ben Affleck talking about how basically he hit rock bottom, and that's how he got out of his alcoholism addiction. And I had posted something along the lines of, basically that's great, but like alcohol and drugs, coping mechanism for people, and if you try to, if you get somebody off drugs or alcohol,
Yeah.
and you're not there to help them with the issues that they can't cope with, then you're it's a losing battle. Like, you have to continue to support people with the issues that they're struggling to cope with. And for whatever reason, that got the attention of some celebrity something, and they
Dude.
included my nothing tweet in an article
Okay.
about Ben Affleck. I'm like, all right, cool, free
man.
publicity.
Whatever gets us noticed.
That's
We'll
what I
take
said.
it. We'll
That's
take
what I
it.
said.
Well,
Yeah.
folks, I hope first of all, I hope I didn't scare you. I'm usually a lot calmer. But damn it,
You're usually the
I
calm one.
do, dude. I really don't like Andrew Cuomo, as I'm sure it's
I really
apparent
don't
now.
either.
So-
Yeah, I really don't either.
So every Thursday, 6
Yeah.
o'clock Eastern, same bat time, same bat channel. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. I hope it gave you, I posted a few articles in the chat.
Yeah.
I'm pretty accessible. I know Arturo is. We're both on Substack, so give us a follow if you're not already, and definitely think about subscribing. That's that's what helps keep the lights on. If you can become a paid subscriber, please consider it. And in the meantime, just kind of try not to get as unnerved as I am, man, because I'm pissed right now. But
try to laugh about stuff, man.
Yeah, you got to
try to
man.
laugh as much as you can. Yeah.
Anyway, until next time,
All right.
folks, take care.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.